What's up, everybody? This is Lavon Cason back at it again with another video, and today I'm going to be doing a reaction video of Grand Theft Auto 5 Xbox Series S Next Gen features tested, 60 FPS, loading times, and more. And the video is from Digital Foundry. This video just came out today, so let's begin.
The enhanced PS5 and Series X release of Grand Theft Auto 5 made an impact with 60 FPS support, an option to run at 4K, and even ray traced shadows. A solid set of upgrades overall was the general verdict there, but it's hardly show-stopping. And I'd argue this should have been a free upgrade to existing PS4 and Xbox One owners. And so I wondered, what of the Series S version? What does Series S, a 4 teraflop machine compared to the 12 teraflops on Series X, bring to the table? Does it live up to the promise of being a so-called next-gen release? Well, after some extra testing, I will say Series S has a lot of the extras of the X version. You get a 60 FPS performance option, for example, a pretty great start there, and even the same upgrades in draw distances and textures over last gen. And yet, there are also key omissions. Missing features that make GTA 5 on Series S feel like a kind of halfway step to what's offered on Series X or PS5, despite the same price tag. So, how do visuals compare between the Xbox consoles? Are all modes intact, or are certain key features once again cut out? And lastly, does Series S's frame rate hold a solid 60 FPS? Let's find out. To cut to the chase on this one, in certain respects, the Series S release is a disappointment. Right from the opening menu, a key mode is chopped out entirely, that being the Performance RT mode on PS5 and Series X.
Definitely.
It was our...
If you really don't care about ray tracing or anything like that, and you just want to play the game or whatever, then get the Series S.
Recommended way to play there, and to recap, Performance RT gave each a way to run with ray traced shadows at 60 FPS. Sadly, it's missing for Series S, and instead you get the two remaining modes. First up here is a fidelity mode that runs at a native 1440p and 30 FPS.
Okay.
So this replaces the pristine native 4K image possible on Series X's fidelity mode, shown on right here. Perhaps expected given the lower spec of Series S, but then there's more bad news, as you can see. Despite the huge drop to resolution on fidelity mode, the ray traced shadows are removed as well on Series S. In comparison, yes, the ray traced sun cast shadows give Series X's world a more natural look in fidelity mode. See how shade diffuses more realistically across the ground, where Series S defaults to the conventional method used on last gen. Comparisons between Series S and X's fidelity modes hold up very well otherwise though. The 1440p versus 4K comparison obviously favours the 12 teraflop machine, but core world settings are identical. Series S gets the enhanced draw distances on trees, foliage, geometry. It gets the higher resolution textures seen on Series X, even the high quality billowing alpha effects on wrecked cars. Series S gets all those in its favour, so every aspect of its core visual settings are matched then, except of course 4K and ray tracing. The option for 4K being removed, I think, is fair enough and expected, but the missing ray tracing features, yeah, that's a shame. Now, if you've been following our next-gen coverage to date, it's hard to be too surprised. Series S losing ray tracing modes, a key selling point going into this generation, isn't exactly...
That's one of the reasons why a lot of people consider the Xbox Series S a last generation system than a next generation system, because of, you know, the loss of ray tracing in Series S versions of games, you know, like Doom Eternal, you know, that doesn't have ray Excuse me, sorry about the burp. That doesn't have ray tracing on the Series S. Or Control. I think that doesn't have ray tracing on the Series S. So, you know, when you hear stuff like this, it doesn't surprise me that people think that the Series S is a last generation system because it doesn't have all the next gen features that it was advertised, such as, you know, the ray tracing and all that other stuff.
New. We've seen it plenty of times. The beautiful ray trace reflections of Guardians of the Galaxy on PS5 and Series X, for example, were stripped from Series S. And then, remember the arty shadows of Cyberpunk. Again, a no-show for Series S.
Yeah.
And likewise, the ray trace reflections for Doom Eternal only ever appeared on PS5 and Series X versions, while Series S stuck to
like
the
I
last
mentioned,
gen
Doom Eternal, like that didn't have ray tracing.
Methods. And now, in Grand Theft Auto 5, there's a fresh example of Microsoft's entry-level console missing out. Especially this early in the generation, losing big features promised for next gen is a sign Series S is already starting to get left behind.
Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back a little bit.
Next gen is a sign Series S is already starting to get left behind.
Ooh. Ooh. Wow. That is interesting. That is a very interesting comment. Don't you guys think? Very interesting comment.
The missing arty shadows are a downside then, but in fairness, it wasn't the only advantage of GTA 5's enhanced release. That, rather, would be the 60 frames per second option, which I'm glad to say is also available on Series S. The 60 FPS mode here comes with an inevitable trade-off in resolution, that being pixel counts dropped to a native 1080p.
Okay, 1080p.
Again, this
60
appears
frames.
typically fixed at 1920 by 1080 on Series S with no DRS in place, which is, I think, perfectly acceptable for 1080p display users. Well within the spec for the console, and for 4K TV owners, it's clear Series X and PS5 are the way to go.
I think the Series S version of Grand Theft Auto 5 looks pretty fine to me.
The only snag? Well, performance at 60 FPS is admittedly less robust on Series S, with more frequent drops under even in typical missions. More on that later, but overall this remains the best part of the enhanced GTA 5 package on console. A quick look at the performance mode in comparison with Series X turns out much as you'd expect otherwise. The 1080p on Series S versus the 1440p on X is the main difference. World detail is fundamentally the same, but distant detail tends to blur over on Series S as you'd expect. Temporal anti-aliasing and motion blur are maintained either way, it's just that the pixel count it has to work from is much lower. This regular performance mode on Series X of course goes without ray tracing, meaning we get conventional shadow settings here, and yes, that's entirely a match for Series S in this case. The final benefit here is Series S also enjoys similar loading speeds to the other new consoles. Just in isolation here, loading to Trevor's home from the main menu takes 21 seconds.
Okay,
a huge advantage then over the older last-gen machines,
that's a pretty
which took
step
well
up. That's
over
a good
2
step
minutes
up.
to get to gameplay.
You know, when it comes to loading times from last gen, it's a pretty good step up.
The 60 FPS mode, the improved loading times, and generally boosted draw distance and textures are all advantages here. Now, the actual delivery of the performance mode on Series S isn't quite as watertight as I've mentioned, so let's take a look at that right now. Even running at 1080p natively, it's telling that Series S still struggles to lock down 60 FPS even in regular missions. The heist prologue bit at the start of the game obviously drops, the car chase showing some small dips to start, but then the shootout at the end of it all tumbles to the 50 FPS line, which wasn't an issue for Series X at all. And that's the bottom line,
the frame
really.
rate dropping
Most of
around the
play
50s.
is at 60 FPS on Series S, But the moments where it drops are usually quite crucial points, like aiming in shootouts or driving. Most of Series S's frame rate troubles appear to have a root cause: destruction physics and alpha effects. The repossession mission with Franklin shows it pretty well here. No issues at all until the exploding car appears on screen, dropping us to the low 40s. And again, the rampage missions with Trevor tend to hammer Series S as well. A bulk of this area runs within the 40 to 50 FPS range, and VRR supporting displays might be able to turn this around into a more playable, visually smoother game. But for most players, yes, you'll notice these extreme drops from time to time. A bulk of play runs just fine at 60 FPS, in fairness, but when pushed, like causing carnage on the streets, Series S gives the lowest reading of the new consoles. A deal breaker? Not exactly, but it's something to bear in mind.
Ooh, look at that frame rate going so low to the 30s. Ooh.
Especially moving past the opening 3 to 4 hours we've tested, where later missions might push Rockstar's engine harder. Last up then, if we switch over, is the 1440p fidelity mode running at 30 FPS. Again, a majority of gameplay will stick to 30 FPS no problem on Series S. Really, the outliers tend to appear at the same moments as performance mode. The big explosive stuff during the first heist, for example, takes us down into the 20s, and similar with Trevor's shotgun-wielding rampages later on. It's slightly more prone to drops in fidelity mode than the PS5 and Series X versions, but honestly not radically so. Causing mayhem on the city streets tends to give the biggest frame rate drops if you fancy going off-piste, which pulls us to the 20 FPS line. The general sense though is Series S is just about playable as a 30 FPS experience if you stick purely to the missions. Taxing the engine hard like this though, well, that's where we really see the hardware's limits, and likewise for anything involving explosive weapons. In general then, the Series S version would have been an excellent free upgrade to the existing Xbox One edition. Who would say no to a new 1080p 60fps performance mode, even if it drops at times? Who would say no to improved loading times at no extra cost? And the draw distances, texture upgrades, already available on PC, a free upgrade could and should have covered all of that. Instead, there's a price tag hanging over GTA 5's enhanced release that doesn't exactly match the content. On Series X and PS5, the choice to make it a new separate release was already questionable, but at least there you got ray tracing support. As for Series S users, well, losing a bullet point feature like RT Shadow...
Honestly, the Series S version of Grand Theft Auto, based on the information that was gathered in this video, and basically for what I've played of Grand Theft Auto 5 on Xbox Series S, it's pretty much a meh to okay at best experience when it comes to playing Grand Theft Auto 5 on the Xbox Series S. And that's just me being real, guys. It's just me being real. Nothing more, nothing less.
Makes it less appealing. Once again, the 60fps mode is the big selling point. I just don't think for a minute this should have been sold at any extra cost. Developers like CDPR with Cyberpunk, and even Eidos Montreal with Guardians of the Galaxy give just as much, if not more, with a free update or even smart delivery. For first-time buyers, the choice to get this version makes sense. And for anyone on Series S, it's a shame to miss out on the full feature set, but 60fps, drops and all, still makes it a decent enough way to play GTA 5. After all the wait and build-up though, the disappointment here is the lack of any real ambition to take this game further. But that's all from me today. If you did enjoy this quick look at GTA 5 on Series S, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell for instant notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch directly, just use Twitter. But from me for now, thanks for watching.
So that was basically me watching the Grand Theft Auto 5 Xbox Series S next gen analysis on Digital Foundry's YouTube channel, and this is what I basically have gathered. You know, the Series S is potentially being left behind. The Series S doesn't have, you know, the performance ray tracing, but it has everything else. It has the performance mode and the fidelity mode. And what else I have gathered, you know, when things are getting real heavy and real intensive, you know, the frame rate could go down all the way low into the 30s. You know, that is pretty much the stuff that I have gathered. And my thoughts is pretty much like this. If you do not care about getting the next generation bells and whistles, such as the ray tracing, because, you know, that's a recurring theme when it comes to the Xbox Series S versions of third-party games. They normally be missing the ray tracing mode, but normally get, like, the fidelity or just the performance mode. You know, that's the thing that I have been noticing with these Xbox Series S versions of games. So, if you don't care about ray tracing, if you just want to pretty much play the next generation game and don't care about what resolution you play it at, you know, resolutions of Series S games, you know, can go up to 1440p. It could go all the way down to, like, 720 something p at times. And if that doesn't bother you, then get the Series S. I mean, it's $300. It's a budget system. But that being said, this is gonna be interesting. You know, later down the generation, you know, how will Series S hold up years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now? You know, could FSR, you know, 2.0 be the solution for the Series S? I mean, if you guys have seen FSR 2.0, it's pretty amazing. And both Xbox Series S and X are getting support of FSR 2.0. And I'm wondering, could that be a solution? But that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think of Digital Foundry's analysis of Grand Theft Auto 5, Xbox Series S, next gen version? Let me know in the comment section below of this video. Hope you guys have a good day and peace. So now that you have made it to the end of the video, I want you guys to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and when you hit that notification bell, you gotta hit all notifications, so that way you can be notified for future Lavon Cason tech videos, future Lavon Cason gaming videos, future Lavon Cason live streams, and also other videos that I do, such as, you know, reaction videos and things of that nature. Bye.